Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. I am David Chen, and with me are
Devinder Hardawar
and Jeff Kanata.
Welcome to the show, everyone. It's November 23rd, and we're recording this in the evening, mere hours after it was announced that apparently the orderly transition of the presidency can begin. We'll see whether or not that lasts. Things tend to change on a day-by-day basis over here.
Just
in the United
a bit
States.
of a delay with this one, you know?
Yeah,
they were a little busy.
No big. Yeah, they were busy. No big.
Take your time.
But anyway, what we're going to do tonight on this film podcast is we got some what we've been watching. We're going to get to weekly plugs and then move on into an in-depth review. This week, we'll be reviewing the new Sean Durkin film, The Nest, starring Jude Law and Carrie Coons. Really looking forward to diving into this one with you. I think it'll be an interesting conversation. That's what's in store for us today on the Slash Filmcast. We also got an After Dark for you. We are going to be going through a Patreon/listener mailbag, responding to some questions in the After Dark this week. Of course, if you want to support this podcast, you can do that by going to patreon.com/filmpodcast. That's patreon.com/ and then the word film podcast. Where you'll get ad-free episodes as well as After Darks. Starting in 2021, that will be the only way you can get After Darks. And you can find more episodes of this podcast in general at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Before we get to any what we've been watching, I did want to mention one big piece of film news, and that is Wonder Woman 1984. It was announced last week that Wonder Woman 1984, one of the most anticipated films of this past summer, is going to be released on HBO Max and in theaters on December 25th, 2020. Yeah.
All right.
So the pandemic has won. The pandemic has won? Is that the verdict?
Well, here's what we'll say. This is not the first time that a movie studio has decided to make a fairly decent size release available on a streaming service. Remember when The Lovebirds came out on Netflix 6 months ago? That was supposed to come out in theaters. A bunch of movies like King of Staten Island were supposed to hit theaters. Trolls World Tour. But this is probably the biggest budget movie. The movie probably cost anywhere between $150-200 million, plus a bunch of money they put into marketing it already.
I don't know. How much did Mulan cost?
Probably
because that's like the other big one, right?
Roughly the same.
Yeah,
That's correct. Yeah. But let me add another caveat then, right? Which is, I think this is the first one that is going to a streaming service where you don't need to pay an additional fee.
Yeah.
Right?
It is straight to streaming in the truest sense. Yeah.
Yep.
But only just for a month, which is an interesting little nickel there, because then you'll have a month to watch it, but you still have to buy it if you want to keep it, which is how I think HBO got around the sort of like Mulan thing, right?
I never would have thought that Wonder Woman would get a straight to video sequel.
Wonder Woman, I think it was the number one movie of the summer, right? The year that it came out.
Yes, it was.
Made like around $400 million domestic. It was unbelievable.
And deservedly so.
Pretty sure you didn't even put that on your top 10 that year, Jeff.
I think it was a dark horse for me because I am tied in to the pulse of America.
Jeff is not regretting that decision still years later.
Really interesting strategy, and I think it is to boost the prospects of HBO Max. Obviously, they're hoping they're going to attract enough subscribers that are going to stick around in order to make it worth it. Jeff, in our texts about this prior to the show, you had indicated that, hey, like this is a movie that in theaters would have made $1 billion. Right?
Yeah,
and I
essentially,
I agree with you. In theaters, it would have made $1 billion. We should also remember, by the way, that Wonder Woman, I think, was originally supposed to come out last Christmas, and it got pushed to the summer because of Rise of Skywalker, if I recall correctly. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, how many people are regretting that decision? Woo!
Yeah.
If hindsight is 2020, woo!
If they could do it over again, right, they'd probably just put it up against Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, of
right?
course, yeah. I mean, you made a very good case, and I'm sure you're going to do it again here, but you made a very good case to me over text that it actually could end up being a lucrative play for HBO Max subscribers. But I have a hard time believing that anybody in Warner Brothers doesn't view this as a massive, massive loss on could have been $1 billion movie. And to the decision to release it on straight up HBO Max must have been an excruciating one for all the people involved. And it is forced on them, and it is probably the least bad choice they could make at this point. But my goodness, the idea that, even up against Rise of Skywalker, I'm sure Wonder Woman would have done very, very, very well. Sure. And to think that, clearly they moved it to summer to make more money. Right. And all of that money evaporated. Maybe not all of it, but I would venture to guess a large portion of that revenue is just gone.
Most definitely. I do have to say,
yeah. Go ahead, Devendra. Go ahead.
Well, one quick thing, right, is that what else can they do? If they want to do something with this hellscape of a year, and I'm somebody who has to report on earnings reports and quarterly figures and things like that. So if Warner Brothers wants to have something to show for 2020, in many different ways, like maybe this pays off more for them with the HBO Max deal. Maybe this is like their Hail Mary, their Hail Diana, that would to really get something for the service. And also HBO Max is kind of a clusterfuck because of many reasons, but mainly right now because they're spending a lot of money just for the Zack Snyder thing for Justice League. So,
but there's going to be like 3 new minutes of footage, dude.
It's gonna be 4 separate hours, 4 hours more, of Justice League.
All right. So I have a lot of reactions to what you guys are saying. First of all, I think HBO Max's launch has been, let's just say, challenging, and I think not that many people are talking about how challenging it is, to be honest with you. But they have spent billions and billions of dollars on content. It was widely reported that they spent $500 million on South Park alone. Just South Park, not even counting anything else they put on the series. $500 million on just South Park. Hundreds of millions.
But to be fair, that's like only $3 an episode.
It's so true.
There's a lot of South Park episodes, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and they haven't gotten that many new subscribers over the course of the last year. I think it was like at the end of 2019, they had like 36 million subscribers for HBO, and then as of this past September, it was like 39 million or 40 million for HBO Max. So it's like, wow, that is a lot of money they spent to get a few million subscribers. Yeah. Meanwhile, compare that to Disney Plus, which has accumulated around over 70 million subscribers in 1 year. So the HBO Max launch has been troubled. Of course, things are starting to look up for them. They have just been added to Fire TV after a long time of not being on Fire TV. They are now going to be on. I hear that they're going to be on Roku soon. So add those two things up.
The Roku thing.
Plus Wonder Woman 1984, and it's like, okay, now like this might set HBO Max on a solid path.
Right.
So I think that there is a potential. This attracts a ton of new subscribers, and those subscribers stick around. They keep paying a monthly fee. That looks good for Warner Brothers.
Well, we've talked a bit about this too, right? With the launch, is that the launch was kind of a disaster for them, and I think mostly from HBO's side of things, because as somebody who's covering this, they were very confusing about what was launching and when was launching and what new things. What can we expect
from a branding perspective?
Can I watch these things? I don't know. And from a consumer, it's like there's HBO Now, there's HBO Go, now there's HBO Max. I already have HBO. Yeah. So what am I subscribing to here?
It was definitely confusing, but I think beyond the money, guys, I would say the big loss of Wonder Woman 1984 moving to HBO Max is this movie would have been a massive cultural moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And has there been a movie or show that has come out during the pandemic that is a massive cultural moment? The only one I can think of is Tiger King.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
the one we
even
deserved.
that. Yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily like the type of cultural moment that we would typically necessarily think of when we think of a movie like Wonder Woman 1984.
Also, I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up, but I think Tiger King came out like 13 years ago.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
but I mean, you can imagine if this movie had come out this summer, there'd be like memes, dozens and dozens of articles about like.
Think of the memes.
The memes that we lost. Pour one out for the memes we lost, you guys.
I'm just okay. You guys are making fun, but I'm being serious. That I think that like there's something about a bunch of people converging on movie theaters, all experiencing something at the same time in one weekend that makes something a cultural moment that is just not going to happen with this movie. Right?
I will miss seeing this in the theater. I will miss actually going and seeing it with the big crowd and having fun with it. Because Wonder Woman, every year I travel to Taiwan for Computex, and Wonder Woman was one of those movies I ended up seeing there. And that was just a blast. Seeing it with, a crowd from a completely different culture, but we were all just like converging and loving it, together. I love that.
I agree that the big screen experience for this particular movie is a loss. I'm sad about that. I think it would have been a fun movie theater experience with my popcorn and my candy.
Kids. I would have loved to bring my daughter to see. She's not been to a big movie theater ever. Like, we never got around to actually bringing her to one of those things.
Yeah.
So she's going to be missing out for a while, at least until things are safer. Maybe next year. Who knows how the vaccine rollout goes? But yeah.
I do think I think perhaps, Dave, you may be overstating the inability of a streaming media to gain a cultural footprint. I think it happens all the time. I think, these shows like Game of Thrones and, you can name a whole bunch of shows that have become that and that people rally around. And sometimes those are shows
Game of Thrones was premium TV, to be clear. And that's a different cachet than the next Netflix show or something.
Well, I think Game of Thrones at the time it ended was one of the most popular shows on TV. It was I think around 16 million views per episode, something was competitive with Netflix. Network television. But go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. I was just say I would argue The Mandalorian is kind of doing that right now with Disney Plus, and I think that those things happen, and I think Wonder Woman 1984 could still be that, but I agree with you that it's not going to be the same thing as shattering box office records this weekend, or it's not going to be that kind of thing with the media showing the people in line all dressed up like Wonder Woman. Those kinds of, I don't know, momentum establishers aren't going to happen.
Things that make a movie culturally relevant, is really what we're going to miss out on a little bit.
We need some sort of bell that chimes every time you say that.
But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I agree with you that we have had shows that have had massive cultural moments, and it's not.
But the moments are short. I think that's the big difference, right? The moment of a streaming thing is short because then it's we're on to the next thing next week. And it doesn't feel like you have time to absorb it. So I don't know. To me, that is the big issue here, because we're talking about I can't think of a Netflix thing that's actually latched on. And Mandalorian is great. I love talking about it with you guys. I love seeing it every week. I see Star Wars fans loving it and talking about it. I don't see the mainstream, I don't see normal viewers talking about it much on Twitter. And that's the thing.
I would say the Mandalorian has come the closest. Mandalorian,
Baby Yoda
is a cultural phenomenon, I think. And so I think those are the two shows, Tiger King and Mandalorian, that have come really the closest. Again, in my extremely limited experience in isolated social sphere, that have come the closest to really breaking out and being kind of mass market hits in this pandemic streaming era.
Let me pitch you on a movie. It predates the pandemic, but I think I would argue that Bird Box did that. I know not to the extent that you would imagine maybe a Wonder Woman having, but I do think that was a movie on Netflix that everybody had to watch at a certain point. It felt like it was
a rite of passage.
We were all just very bored.
I would argue that Bird Box is a great example of why you're wrong, Jeff. I would argue
that movie.
Who has talked about Bird Box in the last 6 months? You know what I'm saying?
No, I'm not arguing that it retained 2 years later. People are still talking about Bird Box. I'm saying that this thing you're talking about, where in this moment, everybody's talking about the same thing at the same time, like an opening of a movie in theaters. I thought that's what the comparison we were making. Not that it has this stamp that transcends space and time.
No, it's both. In my opinion, it's both. It's both. You have the massive kind of box office opening. Everyone